This is going to be the dreaded I got a leak in my slide out video and how we're going to fix it. So this right here is a 2019 Starcraft launch. It is a 20 BHS camper. Really unique. It's only 20 foot long with a dual axle, which makes it great for towing. Really surprisingly smooth. And when you get to your destination, it has this cassette style slide out. It's really fantastic. And in fact, one of the things we really like about it, not only does it have the fiberglass tough shell with the aluminum frame inside, but one of the problems with a slide out is when you get to your destination, you usually can't get right in and get anything done. Or if you need to stop and use the restroom whenever you are stopping for a gasoline break or whatever with your tow vehicle, sometimes these things are not accessible. Even like the refrigerator, if you stop before you go into a camping spot and you want to be able to fill up the fridge or put something in your pantry, with a slide out, you often have to kind of climb around it and whatnot. So this slide out houses a king size bed, which is really nice. We've got a couch in here. We've got a dinette that makes into a bed, of course. When you flip this down and press the slide in button, this comes all the way forward and stops right here, which allows full access of the important bits when you're traveling until you get where you want to go. So it's really the equivalent of like a 26 footer when you add the bed all the way out in a 20-foot package. So we've been real happy with the design. I've owned multiple travel trailers over the years, and this one fits the bill with an oven, microwave, nice size fridge, full-size tub shower for an RV, bathroom, private bathroom, and in this 20-foot package, the bunkhouse up front. You can bring the kids and they can have a place to sleep up here. And of course, it has a nice exit door. But enough about that. The problem with this is it sprung a leak. And the result of a leak is rotten wood, other issues. Now, this one's a bit of a mystery because we never smelled anything bad in here. We never saw any issues, anything that would normally make you think you have a leak. And I'm very meticulous about the maintenance on my camper. I clean it, I check it, I reseal it. But thanks to the coronavirus, this thing actually sat a lot last year. We bought it early in February of 2020, even though it's 2019, we did buy it new. But let me show you why. We're going to get into this video a little bit deeper. This is the nightmare that nobody wants to see on their camper. So you can see the wood rot from the water getting in. The side that you see from outside doesn't look so bad. But when you look inside, you realize you've got a real problem. So we're going to talk about this. I'm going to show you more about what I found and give you some ideas in case you're dealing with a leak on your slide out. This will help you detect it and remedy it. None of the products I show in this are sponsored. These are all products that I found to be very useful, and that's why I'm sharing them. And with the right tools, anybody can do this, save a lot of money, save a lot of time, and get your RV back out camping. So with that said, let's jump right in. All right, what we're looking at here is the wet spot that I noticed in the camper. And this goes right up along the top of the bed where your head would be resting while you're sleeping. This area here is something you don't normally see unless you pull the mattress up or pull it back. And so as you can see, this whole area here has gotten wet. Moisture is coming into this corner and causing this area to be soft. I did clean it with some bleach before we got started in the event that there was any mold here that was going to cause an illness while repairing the RV. But it's always worse underneath than what you can see when you first notice a soft spot. So the plan inside, especially while it's like 37 degrees outside right now, is to get this ready for the floor replacement. I removed more than was necessary, obviously, because the damage was just along the top edge. What I'm going to do here, there's a framing rib under here that I had cut to flush. What I'm going to do is mark this in the center so I have an overlap, and I'll lay my new panel half and half, and then I'll staple that back down. I'm going to add a support along the edge. There's just a little bit that sticks out, but I'm going to expand that with a 2x4 so that I can properly set the floor in here. And there's not a lot of weight on this. This is just a sleeping area. This is the headboard side of it. But I get all that cleaned out, and I'm going to make a single panel that drops in here in this place, and that'll complete that, replace the insulation in it, and we'll be good to go. So I got my measurements. It looks like the opening is right at 76 1/8 this way, and then 28 inches this way. These edges are all cleaned up, so I'm ready to lay down on top of it. And those are 24 1/2, so I'm going to build a little piece to go in there, and that should replace all this flooring. So the insulation goes in. There's not much to this. I actually put a new piece in on that side, and I'm putting what was on that side on this side. There's not much to it. Got a little bit of sawdust in it. All right. There was adhesive between these panels. That's part of what made it a little tricky, a lot tricky actually, to get this separated right here. So structurally, to try to keep everything sound, I'm going to go ahead and glue it all back together again. I'm using Gorilla Glue part, trying to fit this in. Obviously want a nice tight fit. Too tight of a fit, we wouldn't be able to get it in. Looks pretty good. slide out design on this camper is very similar to a fifth wheel, where they have in the upper area above the fifth wheel section, above the gooseneck, the slide outs. You'll typically see this kind of trim that goes all the way around. Regular slide out that's just on the side of your camper typically doesn't have this lower piece, usually just wraps under the camper. Talked to my local RV dealer about the most common cause of water getting into this lower section, and he said this is usually the culprit. So what we're going to do is get this open, take this apart, look underneath there. He says that over time, and this camper, this is a 2019 camper, today is March 2021. We took delivery on this camper February 2020 as a new owner. So, you know, it's coming up on 2 years old, but technically we've really only had it a year, and this water leak developed. So this area here is siliconed in, and this bond can break, and he tells me that water can get down inside of here. So we're going to get all this open, see what that looks like. First thing I have to do is go ahead and get the slide out extended. Slide out extended, we can now get a idea how all this comes together. Now this is different than side slide outs. A lot of times they just have a piece of plywood on the bottom. This actually has like a Luan piece. There's a 2x4 in here, and then the base of the bed sits on a 1/2-inch piece of plywood that rides above here. So I've seen a lot of complaints that water can get in through here, and actually as we look at this, there is a gap in this the seal. So we're going to take care of all of this while we're at it as well. But this trim piece that we're talking about is held in by these screws that run all the way along. So I'm going to get into the process of dealing with that to try to take care of these issues, because water can be possibly getting in here, working its way into the corner of the camper. Anytime you're doing RV repairs like this, you always have to deal with butyl tape, getting it out of the tracks and moldings before you put fresh stuff in. So this is pretty common. You're going to find this on any. So it becomes pretty obvious to me that our leak was indeed coming from this panel that closes out the bottom of the slide out. The amount of dirt and crud that's collected on the butyl tape right here, this should not be, there should be no dirt or crud getting into this channel, because supposedly it was sealed along that line right there. So obviously the water's been able to come in and fill up and find, and then find a gap to wick up under this panel. And you can even see the staining on it where it's been sitting up in here. So so this becomes pretty obvious what kind of issues you have with water getting up under the lip and into this vapor barrier. Those screws go right through. Of course, this is where the back trim piece goes on. And we'll come around and I'll show you this one before I tear it off. But you can see that this lip, it comes down, and then that right there is the plywood underneath this material. And you can see the exposed screw here, maybe. So I'm going to wrap that whole thing in EternaBond, and the same here, so that we get this lip totally concealed. And I will finish by wrapping this outer one so that everything overlaps in such a way that the water doesn't then puddle up and sit inside that. So this next part is the really tricky part. I have cleaned the surface with EternaBond Eterna Cleaner, and it's cold right now. It's right about 40 degrees, and the magic temperature for this stuff is right at 40 degrees or higher. And when you're putting it on in colder temperatures, they recommend that you use this surface preparation. So what I'll be doing here is installing this 4-inch wide EternaBond. I'm going to put it on, roll it over. I'm going to have to do some fancy cuts and things to get it to lay around these pieces, but that will be the priority of this next stage here. I'm going to start out by getting the cleaner on it. And one important note, when you have your EternaBond, keep your side paper, because that keeps junk from getting on it when you put it down. It's very sticky stuff. Let's start out and get some primer on here. I also marked where my screws are, because once I get this going a little bit further, I'm not going to be able to see any of that. But again, what we're trying to do here is create basically a layover, a tuck, where any water that gets down past that molding is going to be forced to roll past this EternaBond tape. Alright, and this stuff is tricky to work with. It's extremely sticky. Of course, there goes my paper I just told you not to lose. And I'm going to start out by figuring my length approximately. Obviously I could have tape measured it, but I'm going to cut it just a little bit long. Stuff tends to stretch a little bit too as you work it. One of the complaints, it has two, so I'm going to use the other one to store it. Some of the complaints of this stuff is that this plastic, there's a clear piece of plastic on here that is the release that covers the adhesive, and there are a lot of tips and tricks, but whatever works for you works for you. You only want to expose as much of it at a time as you need. What I'm doing is I'm putting it just below this green tape is the lip of the molding, and I want to come below that very sticky stuff, but that's good. So I'm going to work it along. I've got a roller here I'll show you in just a moment. Again, our goal here is to create a seal where no water can run in between and get up on that edge right there. And thank goodness, this is all going to be pretty well hidden. I'm not doing the most brilliant job installing it. All right, so this next part, start in the middle here, roll it over. You can actually see my where my screw holes need to be for the molding, which is good. There we go. Yeah, it's not perfect. Cut it just around this bracket. Very sticky stuff. All right, so far it's looking good. That primer really gets this stuff to bite. Yeah, there we go. Why they don't do this from the factory, I don't know. It would take them, you know, minutes to do this during the whole install. They'd have to charge you $100 more for the camper. And you wouldn't be stuck with this sealing issue underneath. So yeah, you can feel that's getting a really good bond. And then I'm going to take this roller and roll it in tight. So as you can see, rain cannot get up underneath that lip any longer. Totally sealed in. That's it. You always want to start with the lowest piece and work your way up so you can create overlap. So I'll be putting an overlap at the top. This whole thing will be sealed in on the back. No more access to these edges. Right about on that molding mark. Yep, you can actually see obviously the screw holes where the molding is going to go back on. RVs use these kind of moldings to actually hold the RV together, because it's what the screws go through that go into the frame on the back side of this. Okay. Scissors. This part here is a little tricky because I'm actually going up into the coach a little bit. That's where the molding terminates. All right. So now, start the process of wrapping it all over. So the adhesive really releases on this stuff as you press it. And that's really the crucial ingredient. There you go. We'll just press it in. Very nice. I'm going to do the other side, take care of some other items, get ready to start putting some of the butyl tape and the molding back on. Catch up with you then. So this lovely stuff here is butyl tape. It's actually pretty easy to work with in the cold weather. That's one benefit to doing this today at 40 degrees, 40, 50 degrees. Normally what I like to do with this is put it in a freezer and take it out when I'm ready to use it if it's hot, because the cold reduces the sticky and the stretching. But what we do with this is essentially it's going to go on the back side of the molding where the original did. And really I'm not even sure that I need it at this point, because the EternaBond is going to do the same job. But what this does is stop the water from weeping down in here into those screw hole areas. And so it's a process of laying it out and putting it on. There we go. Pull the tape back. And away you go. And this is the stuff that you see on your camper oozing out here and there around the edges. So it's natural. It's what they put in there from the factory. And in some cases you double up on it. And I'm thinking because this was already a doubled up, the original one was. And I'm thinking because we put the EternaBond in there, maybe I shouldn't double, but we'll see. Kind of figure out what we're doing with it. And I will, see, goes right on there. I'll catch back up with you later. So I took a trip to the RV place this morning, and the recommended sealant, because this thing is specifically flexible for this molding, is this quad stuff right here. And runs about 14 bucks a tube apparently. And what I'm going to do is kind of a double layer. I'm going to apply it. I'm going to go ahead and apply it down in here with the goal of, again, stopping water before it even has to get onto this seal and into these corners. And I'll go ahead and assemble the lower molding. The lower molding also has a piece of butyl tape in it that I've already installed. So I'm going to go ahead and start with this. And that green tape is to keep it from making a big mess up on the body, so I can easily clean it off. This is supposed to be just kind of smeared in like caulking would be on a window or door around the house. It comes in white, clear, probably other colors as well, and of course black. I had a choice on this between really white or black. The factory stuff on here was clear, and I'm thinking, I don't know what it was. It cleaned off okay with acetone. It was maybe somewhere a mix between some sort of a silicone and a possibly an adhesive. So we'll go ahead and put this on, and the next thing we'll do is put the molding up in place. So I discovered here, when the slide out does its thing, and you'll notice on this one it's tilted right now. That's part of the mechanism how it drops into the camper when it closes. But this is just before it comes to a full close. As it comes in, it applies pressure against a weather strip, and that causes these to flex. Okay, and you can actually see there's movement in it right there. Okay, these things are not 100% rigid because there's nothing holding them together out here. They just have screws on the very inside. And I'm in the process of trying to clean this up, but what I noticed is that when I closed it, the sealant wasn't 100% dry yet and started squeezing it out. And it made me realize that I need to make sure it completely dries in this position so that when it does close, it squeezes even tighter. If I have it soft, if it's not dry yet, when I close it and it squeezes it out, when the slide out opens, it's going to stretch it and crack the bead. So I'll set all my bead in here with it slightly open. But to look carefully at this, I'm busy cleaning this other sealant out. This factory sealant on these models is just right here on the very edge. And I know from removing the bottom one, there isn't really anything back here. So what happens then when this stuff dries out and cracks, and it's going to crack because of the movement in these opening and closing. You can see here, even from the factory, they put the sealant on it after the corner piece was in. So they just kind of went around that edge right there. And this is exactly what splits open. I don't think up here it's going to affect anything. Maybe a little bit down here. But the problem comes in when it comes down and then it gets into that. When that factory clear sealant's broken, it runs in. So I did notice on the brand new ones that they do have an outer bead all the way around. So once I get all this cleaned out very carefully on the edge, I'll be taping it on each side and leaving about a 3/8 inch gap. And then I'll be taking this other quad sealant and just running it in there. So there's that extra bead, and it is it says on the label it's 25% more flexible, or 25% flexible. Unlike this stuff is very hard, and it's clearly breaking and allowing the water to get in, which is what happened along here. Okay, that actually makes a nice clean bead so far. Try to push that in and thin it out. Pull the tape. Find out how well we did. Tape is going to be a problem. Get it to come off in its entirety. Tell you what, some people are really good at this. I am really bad at this. Alright, so we're pushing that in. Not too much, hopefully not too little. My way down. All right. That's the upper ridge. This is the one. It's really not looking so good. Which I am admittedly at the limit of what this stuff is supposed to run. 1/4 inch is as thick as this stuff is allowed to be to do its job. Like that. All right. So now what we want to have handy is some metal spirits. and peel this off. Trick is to do it before anything skims over. And we have plenty of cool weather right now to help with that. So there it goes, nice and easy. So that's the finished product. We now have a steady bead around. Actually, I see a little spot there I need to touch up. But there's a steady bead all the way around. That's a very flexible joint. Really not that worried about water getting in the side one, but obviously it can. And if it gets in, it's going to try to come down. And obviously then it's going to try to get inside and fill up that channel, which will run inside the bed. But all that is sealed. And I noticed, even though this camper is not that old, 2019, we took delivery of it February 2020 as a new unit. But this is the little pizza wedges that go on the corners. They finish off that slide out, and that plastic has really not aged well. So I'm going to scuff that down and apply some paint to it just to see. I mean, it can't make it any worse. That way when I reassemble it, everything will be fresh looking. But that's it. So this is the last part here, is getting this extra EternaBond to lay over the sides and all the other pieces I put on it. And the factory one, they do have an EternaBond on there, but it's a looks like it's like a 3-inch. So I'm going to overlap it. If some is good, more is better. The goal here is to prevent any additional water to go down in that gap and run down into the side. So we're going to overlap the other one. And there it is, 4-inch EternaBond tape over the top. I also went ahead and EternaBond this back lip. I'll eventually do all the edges. Recap of what we did here today. So the water was coming in around the molding that closes out the slide out in the back of the camper. That same exact type of molding is used on a whole lot of campers, and probably most popular on a fifth wheel style, where in the upper portion by the gooseneck, slide outs up there often are trimmed all the way around. But you will see it in other models. Basically, the telltale sign is if the same molding that you see around the top and sides goes around the bottom, then you've got it. So typical slide out, the molding only goes around the side and top, and then the bottom just rolls under. So what happens is each time the slide out opens and closes, the pressure goes against it to create the seal, and the top edge of that molding can break free, the silicone that they put in from the factory. So once that breaks open, you won't necessarily see it when you are just observing your camper, but it will allow water to start entering in. And then over time, whether the slide out is open or closed, but probably more likely while it is closed, because of the pressure being put on the molding, the water is going to try to get in. Because they don't seal the bottom of these walls from the factory, the water can get into the bottom, and then it wicks in there, and it has nowhere to go but to stay in that channel. Over time then, that water will then sit in that channel, wick its way up through the wall and into the floor. Once it gets into the floor, it kind of has free reign to go where it wants to go and settle into the lowest spots. We caught this thing, again, just by happenstance. We decided to put a MyPillow mattress topper on here, and in order to do that, you have to pull the mattress back and loop it around, and that's when I saw the spot up there. And in fact, it really isn't a spot I would have normally expected to look for a leak, but it's where it was coming in. And you can imagine the perplexing issue here, because There's no evidence of water coming from the roof down, which is where you would typically expect to see a leak, working from a high spot coming in. So my local RV dealer at Four Winds, very helpful people. In fact, they did tell me, since this camper is just now out of warranty, they told me if I wanted to bring it down there, leave it with them, let them take pictures. They could have sent in a request to the manufacturer, to StarCraft, to see whether or not they would be interested in assisting. But honestly, I want to get this thing up and running. I want to know what's behind the walls. And at the end of this, I've probably got about $200, maybe $250 total in materials. I actually overbought some of my materials, so it shouldn't have cost that much. This whole repair could have been done potentially for under $100. Lumber is really expensive right now, so that piece of plywood in the back, which is what they call grade AC, on one side it's grade A. You can finish it, make it look like a stained cabin or whatever. The back side is not as nice. Doesn't have to be. That piece of plywood alone was nearly $50 just with our expenses right now. So, and I didn't need a whole piece. I just needed almost just less than half of it, really. But that and the adhesive and the EternaBond, and why manufacturers don't put EternaBond on campers, on all the joints and seals from the factory, I have no idea. But it would be wise if they did so. The EternaBond I have on there now creates a 360-degree seal so that no matter if the water even gets behind the moldings, it has nowhere to go but to run out, go out on the ground. So those are sealed up. I've done what they do on the brand new campers, where they put a bead all the way around, a visible bead around the outside of that molding. I've done a little bit of detail work. This is taken care of. I did have to order from the manufacturer the wallpaper in here. My local RV dealer doesn't carry it, and they have these tape strips that go on each joint. There was already a tape strip joint down there where this damage was, and I actually tore up some of that when I was cutting around it. So I'll put that in whenever it comes in. No point in filming that or waiting to film that. Just a matter of sticking that on. We're going to go ahead and get the mattress back in here, get the mattress topper back in here, get everything cleaned up so that we can hopefully enjoy this camper this season. So thanks for watching, and I'll bring some more content to you as soon as something else around here breaks and I have a reason to fix it. Thanks.